So this video isn't so much about directions, but it's more like, you know what, I'm really struggling with these readings or these pictures, and I have no idea what's going on. So I'm going to talk through the information and help you understand it a little bit better. So in this first section, you're looking at these photos, and you'll see in these first ones, it's saying things like Europeans only, and it's a Slegs Blancs. That's a Afrikaans word. That's the language they spoke in South Africa. And then it says beach area for only whites. And this is all non-Europeans, meaning all non-white people with bicycles, please use this small street entrance. So they have to go to a different place. And this one, they're saying natives, Indians, coloreds, meaning people of color. If you enter these premises at night, you will be listed as missing. Armed guards shoot on sight. Savage dogs devour the corpse. So this is literally showing that one group of people can go there and another people can go somewhere. So it's already setting up this image of a place where people are being treated very differently based on their skin color. And then the second set of photos we see, it's kind of hard to see in this one up here, but it says non-white shop, and you see kids, and the shop it doesn't look like a place that you really want to go. In this one, this woman looks like she's in pain, and he looks maybe like he's crying or screaming. And then you see this child, and it's kind of hard to tell from the photo, but this child is definitely dead. And these are Black individuals. This photo down here, you see a Black man who's dressed well, but with white guards pointing a gun at him. And you see a similar image of a young Black boy with white police. These images are older, but they definitely still feel a little too real, right? So based on these two things, and then you wrote about how you felt and how you thought maybe these people felt, the question at the end is, basically, these photos are all telling us a picture about something called apartheid. So I want you to take a guess as to what you think apartheid means. And then, so you took your guess, you move on to the next page, and it tells you what apartheid is. So apartheid, you literally see the word apart in it. And to be apart means to be separate. So apartheid is an Afrikaans, the South African language, word meaning separateness. And apartheid is a system of racial segregation. And segregation means to separate or divide that existed in South Africa. It was created and then enforced by the mostly white government. So kind of like in the United States when there were different water fountains or different parts of the bus for Black and white people. South Africa had the same thing, but it lasted for much longer. And this thing was called apartheid. Apartheid is a very specific word to South Africa. So when we're talking about segregation in South Africa or treating people differently based on their skin color, we call it apartheid in South Africa. We don't call it apartheid here because we don't speak Afrikaans here, but that's what it was called there. So then there's some questions, and then there's this image here that talks about how apartheid affected the people. So it's kind of a timeline, as you can see. So it says, in 1910, the Union South Africa is formed and the political rights of Black South Africans are taken away. Then their land is taken away. Then, let's see what else happened. The National Party, which is mostly white people, creates apartheid, this horrible system. Then in 1950, they basically divide people into different groups, white, colored, and native people, so mixed or Black people. So they're saying one group is better than the other, kind of like in France where we had the social systems, or in Haiti where those divided by color, literally. Then actually you have to go down here. Then there's this thing where they create separate public spaces for Black, coloreds, and whites, meaning you get to live in this place, or you get to go to that place, and we get to go to this place. So like you can go to this beach and we can go to that one. Literally saying you can't come into our place. You're not good enough. Then there's the Bantu Authorities Act, which creates homelands for Blacks and strips them of their citizenship. So basically it's saying we're taking all of your rights that you had, like having the right to vote, having the right to own something, all the things that you are supposed to have as a citizen, they're gone. It's like being what we call an illegal alien, being somebody who is not at home in their own place. They also then have to carry these passport-like things that they have to get stamped to go into certain areas. These were called, they had these pass laws, it says down here. They were basically so they could control the people and see where they were going and say, well, if you don't have a pass, you can be arrested. Finally, and this one really gets me, the 1970s, they have this resettlements. They forcibly remove more than 3 million Black South Africans and place them on new reserves. When I hear the word reserves or reservations, the first thing I think about is Native Americans in the United States. So essentially, these people who have been living in this land their entire lives are being mistreated by the Europeans who have settled there and lived there now for hundreds of years. But just because they are Black and the others are white, they are now being forced to move from their land, go somewhere else, and do the dirty work for the white people, or to not even interact with them. So we see this with the Native Americans in our own country. We've seen this even with things like communism in China, or when they were forced to go work in certain places. It wasn't on race, but there was this forced movement to somewhere else to do something because the government said to. So then you're going to answer some questions about those. I'm going to scoot past them so you don't see them. Then there's this video, and again, it's Trevor Noah. He's South African, and he is talking with his grandmother, who is Black and grew up in South Africa. And she talks about her experience of being a Black woman in South Africa during this time of apartheid, where there was this segregation. And it's a really interesting video to hear her perspective on it. She also talks a little bit about the next person we're going to look at, who is Nelson Mandela. And she calls him Madiba. And she basically is saying he is this god to the people. So Mandela is really one of the most well-known people in history. He's seen as this savior. Essentially, he was an avid, meaning a really strong fighter for the rights of Black South Africans, and he fought for an end to apartheid. He also eventually became the first Black president of South Africa. And you're like, wait, what? A Black president in Africa? Weren't they all Black? No. In South Africa, they had a chunk of white South Africans. That's why you actually see white people from South Africa, because they'd settled there so long ago and they continued to stay, and they just inherently thought they were better than the native Black South Africans. So he fought against those racist laws and becomes the first Black president of South Africa. A huge moment. It's kind of similar to when Barack Obama became our first Black president in the United States, but it was monumental for these people because it's a country that is primarily Black. So you'll watch a video clip about Nelson Mandela. It's a short one. And then there are these reading questions. There's another document. If you're like, I really need help with these, there's another document linked in Google Classroom that I read all of these readings and the questions that you can listen to me read. Additionally, there's a few videos in here that talk about Nelson Mandela and his time in prison, when he was fighting for rights, and then when he became president. So the last thing is the quiz, and I'm not actually going to go over this, but you are basically answering short multiple choice questions because I feel like we need a little bit of help with the multiple choice. Not that you haven't been doing well, but there's some multiple choice questions and they're very Regent style. Not that we're taking a Regents, but you will take a U.S. history one, and they're very similar to that, just different stuff. At the end, though, you will see there is, I'm giving you a free answer here. It says, what is an enduring issue connected to Nelson Mandela's ideas? In your response, you must, 1, correctly identify and define an issue. 2, explain how the issue is connected to Nelson Mandela and his ideas using evidence from today's lesson. You can go back and look to find evidence. And then finally, you must write at least 3 sentences. That is it. Then you will fill out the feedback and reflection and you're done.